Today, we are diving deep into endoscopic retrograde cholangiopancreatography, or ERCP. It's a procedure that is, well, it's arguably one of the most technically demanding maneuvers in all of gastroenterology.
It is. It's absolutely essential. I mean, ERCP is the workhorse for treating stones,
And
strictures.
there's complex issues deep inside the biliary and pancreatic ducts.
Exactly. But the success of the whole thing, the entire therapeutic procedure, it's decided right at the start. It all comes down to achieving what's called selective biliary cannulation.
And that one moment, that single act, is the flashpoint for everything. Our sources really lay it out. Even for the most experienced operators, cannulating a normal papilla can fail 5 to 20% of the time.
Yeah.
That's intense pressure.
And that pressure is magnified, by the one thing we're trying to avoid at all costs. The primary catastrophic complication, post-ERCP pancreatitis, PB.
This isn't just a minor side effect we're talking about.
No, not at all. It can be a life-threatening complication. So our entire deep dive today is about mapping out that mental algorithm experts use, a structured, systematic way to get success while ruthlessly minimizing that PEP risk.
So our mission for you, the listener, is to understand this controlled escalation pathway.
Right.
We're starting with the safest option and then methodically moving up the ladder to the necessary rescue measures when things get tough.
And that's the key. This is a procedure where just persisting, trying the same fail technique over and over is often way more dangerous than knowing when to switch tactics.
Okay, let's start at square one, the setup. How do you position the duodenoscope to even give yourself a fighting chance?
Positioning is everything. The goal is to achieve what's called the short position. This means you want the scope tip positioned slightly below the papilla.
Below it, not right on it.
Right. If you're pushing directly onto the papilla or if the scope is unstable, you're just creating trauma from the get-go. You're fighting the natural angle of the ducts.
And what about the aiming point? It's not just straight up, is it?
No, not at all. You have to aim for the 11 to 12 o'clock direction. That's the natural anatomical path of the common bile duct. Our sources are crystal clear on this. Success is often decided by these micro adjustments before you even advance a device.
Got it. Now, historically, the technique was all about injecting contrast dye to see the anatomy. Why have we moved away from that as the first-line approach?
Because it's just inherently risky. Every time you inject contrast, especially if it accidentally fills the pancreatic duct, you're creating pressure, you're causing trauma.
And that pressure and trauma directly link to a higher PP rate.
That's it. The less trauma, the less pressure, the lower your risk.
Which is the perfect lead-in to the modern gold standard, primary wire-guided cannulation, WGC. How does this just fundamentally change the game?
WGC flips the old method on its head. It's the first line of attack. Instead of pushing contrast to see where you're going, you advance a tiny hydrophilic guide wire ahead of everything else.
Ahead of the catheter.
Ahead of the catheter or sphincterotome, yes. You use minimal, often zero contrast, until you are 100% certain that wire is in the bile duct.
So the wire is like a gentle pathfinder. You're almost feeling your way in.
Precisely. And we have multiple randomized controlled trials to back this up. WGC doesn't just improve success rates. It significantly lowers the risk of PU. It's the gentle touch.
I love this quote from the source material. It says, "You are not stabbing the bile duct. You are allowing the wire to fall into it." That really captures the whole philosophy, doesn't it? That idea of resistance-free advancement.
It does. That's the marker of a safe, successful attempt. But now, here's where that strict mental algorithm really kicks in, the critical decision point. What do you do when that gentle wire repeatedly goes into the pancreatic duct instead?
Right. You've just hit the pancreas. That's already a point of trauma, however mild.
And the rule is clear. If the wire goes in once, you withdraw, you realign your scope, you try again. But, and this is the consensus, if that wire enters the pancreatic duct a second time, you must stop. You stop persisting blindly without approach. The risk of trauma just becomes unacceptable.
And that single decision immediately kicks us into the escalation phase. You've hit the limit of the safest technique. This is where it gets really interesting, because instead of seeing the pancreas as an obstacle you failed to avoid, you start using it as an ally.
Exactly. When standard WGC fails because you keep accessing the pancreas, that failure point becomes your leverage point. The strategy pivots to Pancreatic Guidewire-Assisted techniques.
Okay, so let's break down the first one. The Double-Guidewire Technique, or DGT. How does leaving a wire in the pancreas help you find the bile duct? It sounds so counterintuitive.
It's brilliant, really. It's just mechanical physics. You intentionally place that first guide wire deep into the pancreatic duct, and you just leave it there.
You leave it.
You leave it. And that wire does two things. First, it splints the papilla, so it stabilizes the tissue, stops it from flopping around. And second, it subtly alters the axis of approach. It changes the angle, redirecting you toward the bile duct.
So you're basically using one wire as a stationary guide rail to help steer the second wire into the correct duct.
That is absolutely it. Your second wire, with new catheter, then attempts to access the bile duct right above that first stabilization wire. It works wonders in these difficult cases.
And then there's a refinement on that, the PGW-assisted cannulation. Is that just a gentler version?
It can be, yes. The PGW method uses the wire mainly for stabilization, just to hold the papilla still while the operator slides a sphincterotome alongside it. It's really useful for very small or mobile papillae that are tough to pin down.
Okay, but these are rescue maneuvers. They sound effective,
Yeah.
but you're inherently manipulating the pancreatic duct more. That sounds like a ticking clock for PP.
And that brings us to the critical non-negotiable safety step. Our sources are unanimous on this. If you use DGT or PGW-assisted techniques, placing a prophylactic pancreatic duct stent is an absolute rule.
So a stent, a small plastic tube to ensure drainage, is mandatory here. Why?
Because you have actively instrumented that duct. You've caused microtrauma, you've caused swelling. The stent is a mechanical guarantee that the duct will drain properly. If you skip this step, the risk of pancreatitis skyrockets. It's the cost of entry for using the technique.
That really highlights the discipline, doesn't it? You choose a more aggressive technique, but you immediately pair it with a mandatory life-saving safety net. All right, let's move to the final layer of escalation, the pre-cut. We know that failure after a certain amount of time, or visible damage, triggers this move. What's the time window we're talking about?
The clock is hugely important. If your standard techniques, even the PGW-assisted ones, have failed after about 5 to 10 minutes, you stop. Or if you can see the papilla getting swollen and edematous from the attempts, you stop. Continuing to probe is just dangerous.
And this leads to that powerful mantra we found. Late pre-cut causes pancreatitis. Early expert pre-cut prevents it. It's this philosophy of choosing a deliberate cut over traumatic persistence.
Absolutely. When the anatomy just won't cooperate, the disciplined choice is to surgically create your access point rather than keep battering the native opening.
So when the operator decides to cut, what's the preferred method? Let's talk about pre-cut fistulotomy.
Fistulotomy is often preferred because of where you start the incision. Instead of cutting the main orifice, the front door, you start the cut above it at the infundibulum where the bile duct bulges.
You're essentially creating a little side entrance to the duct.
That's a perfect analogy. This controlled cut gives you direct biliary access, it avoids the pancreatic orifice, and it's associated with a lower PE risk when done by an experienced operator. As soon as you see bile, you slide the guide wire in.
Now contrast that with needle knife papillotomy, NKP. Where does that cut start?
NKP starts right at the papillary orifice. You're cutting the lip of the structure itself. Now, it can be effective, but it carries a higher risk of complications, especially if it's done late in the game or by someone less experienced. It's usually reserved for cases where you need to unroof the orifice.
And finally, the ultimate rescue for a very specific problem, transpancreatic septotomy or TPS. When do you pull this out of the toolbox?
This one is highly targeted. You use it when getting into the pancreatic duct is super easy. You can wire it every time. But the common bile duct is just completely stubborn. The problem is the physical wall, the septum between the two ducts.
And the technique is literally cutting through that wall.
Precisely. The operator makes a controlled incision right through that pancreatic sphincter septum to create a direct opening into the bile duct. It's very effective when that septal wall is the core problem.
And given how aggressive that is, I have to assume the safety protocols are even more rigid here than with DGT.
Oh, absolutely mandatory. If you perform a TPS, the full safety net is deployed, no questions asked. That means mandatory prophylactic pancreatic stenting, and you administer rectal NSAIDs like indomethacin or diclofenac right after. The PP brisk is just too high to gamble. Which brings us to the full safety protocol, which is really the bedrock of the entire procedure.
We've covered the mechanical part, the stenting, but let's review. Beyond DGT and TPS, when else is that PD stent strongly recommended?
It's strongly recommended anytime you've had multiple, even unintended cannulations of the pancreatic duct, or after any of the advanced pre-cut methods. The logic is simple. If you've traumatized the duct, you must ensure it drains.
Right, the stent is the guarantor. And what about the pharmaceutical side, the rectal NSAIDs?
They're standard adjunctive measures. They're given to lower inflammation and are widely proven to reduce the incidence and severity of PEP, especially in high-risk patients. They really work hand in hand with the mechanical stenting.
And the simplest prevention measure of all, just respecting the clock. That 5 to 10-minute rule isn't arbitrary.
Not at all. It's evidence-based. That time limit exists because the risk of trauma and swelling increases exponentially after that window. The discipline to stop is itself a crucial safety measure.
So when we synthesize all of this, the technical details, the acronyms, the rules,
Right.
what does this systematic approach really tell us?
It tells us that expert ERCP is not about brute force persistence. It's a systematic three-stage mental algorithm. You start with the safest technique, wire-guided cannulation. If that fails, and you access the pancreas, you use that failure as a tool with DGW or PGW, always coupled with a prophylactic stent. And if you're still stalled, you escalate early to a planned expert precut, preferably a fistulotomy.
It's a decision tree where every step of added risk is immediately matched with the pre-planned safety response. It's about managing risk, not just hoping for the best.
The procedure demands strategy, discipline, and, a profound respect for the papilla. It's all about limiting tissue trauma.
Right, the sources are consistent. Expertise isn't just about skill, it's about the wisdom to know when to stop and how to change your strategy safely.
Which leads to our final thought for you to consider. This ERCP algorithm wire-guided first, safety protocols always, early expert escalation beats late persistence. It's a perfect template for high-stakes decision-making in any field. Think about the processes in your own professional life. Where could applying a controlled, evidence-based escalation strategy, where you deploy safety measures before complications arise, lead to better, safer outcomes? The real genius lies in pre-planning for failure.